Welcome. I'm Michael Bowman, a partner with Anderson Business Advisors, and I'm very excited to be here with you guys today in order to show you guys effective strategies for protecting your wealth. And what I mean by protecting your wealth is protecting it from taxes and lawsuits. What we're going to be going over in the next 20 minutes is a simple fact that we need to go ahead and protect our wealth from lawsuits, be able to protect it from the taxes, and also be able to put yourselves in a situation where you're able to pass your assets on to future generations or your heirs or whoever you guys decide you want to pass it on to. One of the things I wanted to cover today is going to be the actual structuring that's going to take care of some of the problems I'm running into in the investing dimension of the market. And I call them 4 essential power structures for real estate investors. Give you a little background on Anderson. We've got 4 different offices in Washington, we've got Wyoming, and Nevada, and Arizona. Now, to give you a little history of Anderson, it was formed in 1999, and the basis of forming this firm was to be able to put under one roof all the legal aspects of real estate and stock investing. Now, one of the things we run into is when you're looking at it strictly from a legal aspect, you ignore the tax aspect. And so after a few years of just addressing the legal aspect, what we've done is we incorporated the tax aspect by acquiring accountants that understand you as investors. A lot of concerns that I've run into with clients or new clients that come in is a simple fact that they get legal advice and then they go over to their accountant and the accountant looks at it from a different perspective and they can't get clear and concise information. And so what we did is we alleviated it and put it all under one roof so your accountants are talking to your lawyers and it just works out better for clients that way. Now, when over the last over 20 years, we've done a few things to really tighten the package up. In Anderson, we look at you as a client as needing to address 4 different areas. The first one's going to be asset protection. Now, some people ask, well, what do you mean asset protection? Asset protection simply means it protects your hard work and sacrifice from the out-of-control litigation system here, the hungry plaintiff attorneys. And then what we need to do is address the tax system, because you can make a lot of money, but it doesn't do you much good if you can't keep a lot of money. Does it make sense? Of course. The other thing we need to do is make sure we get business planning in there, where when you design it from a legal aspect, a tax aspect, it also allows you to operate as a business. And what I mean by that is when you operate as a business, you need to be able to get loans, you need to be able to get financing, you need to be able to be quick on your feet and maybe close deals right away. And so we need to take a look at business planning and get you in a situation that you're able to take care of the deals that come up quickly, or how to structure it and how everything works together to benefit you. And the reason why I said it needs to benefit you is you're out there doing the hard work, you're sacrificing, and that is what we need to make sure that everything works together. Now, most of our clients come in and they build their businesses up, and unfortunately, they pass away. And what we need to do is make sure your hard work gets on to the next generation, and it does something good for them as opposed to being a deterrent. We've all heard nightmare probate stories, how long it takes, 18 to 24 months. We have heard about the family infighting, from grieving and greed go together. And so what we call the Anderson system addresses these 4 areas. Now, the 4 areas I want to get into today are going to be long-term real estate investing, how to maximize the privacy and the protection. The next thing we need to do is look at how you're doing deals short-term, because there's some pretty nasty tax advantages or tax problems that come in if you don't structure the right way. And so we want to make sure that you're getting the most out of the tax code. Yep, you heard me correctly. Get the most out of that tax code. And what I mean by that is a lot of people think the tax code is restrictive. In actuality, it gives us a lot of benefits too. And so the third area I'm going to cover today is going to be the retirement strategies, because a lot of people have built over time the retirement accounts out, and what we want to do is show you how to invest through your retirement accounts. The last thing, again, like I talked about, is once we build this wealth, we need to go ahead and pass it on, and we call it dynasty planning. And so a couple of areas I wanted to cover before we even get to those is some of the barriers to the planning. One of the things I hear from clients is their advisors tell them just to get more insurance. Now, I'm a big fan of insurance when it works, and I think it's important and imperative for everyone to have. The problem is that insurance only kicks in when it's covered, when there's coverage. Now, what I mean by that is if anyone's read their policies, you'll find that there's a ton of exclusions in there. And the other problem we have is the simple fact that the average insurance nowadays that people have doesn't cover the judgments that are coming out. And so we need to take a look at insurance. Again, insurance is a first good line defense, but you need to be structured in order to be able to take care of the asset protection and the tax threats that we have out there. Now, the other thing I want you guys to start looking at is the simple fact that you guys generally are operating underneath what we call the personal tax code. And what that is you earn, you're taxed, and then you get your paycheck and you get to spend whatever's left over. Now, I like to turn my clients into business people. And what I mean by that is they go under the business tax code. The business tax code flips things around, and what happens is it comes down to the simple fact that under a business you earn, then you spend, and then you're taxed on what's left over. Isn't that a better way to go ahead and do things? Absolutely. So let's go ahead and get into this, because we only got a short time to cover this, but let's get into how we structure long-term activities. What we want to do is make sure that we protect the assets. What I call is protecting the mailbox money. When I invest long-term, I'm not looking at it just from appreciation or how much my rent is bringing me in. I'm looking at it from everything. I'm looking at future appreciation. I'm looking at it as a retirement plan to live off the rental income that I'm getting. And again, the appreciation and what I'm clearing. It's a big ball that we want to look at from a global perspective as opposed to a minute perspective. And so how we get asset protection is an entity, it's called the LLC. And we need to make sure that we address some of the systems, because if you do a Google search, you will find out that a lot of people recommend just put the property in LLC. And then they'll get into what a charging order is. And what a charging order is really just a lien against the interest. So if you get sued personally, and you get a judgment against you, well, the judgment creditor, the way the law originated was the judgment creditor couldn't take and reach in and pull the assets out of the LLC. What they were forced to do was they would get a charging order, which is a lien against your interest. So any money that came out of the LLC would go to the judgment creditor. Now, the way we structure it is that we can go ahead and have you as a manager where you simply wouldn't distribute money out of the LLC. Now, in the original intent of the law, it basically limited what the remedies to the creditor was. In fact, they couldn't become a partner in the business. They couldn't demand income from your business. They couldn't force you to distribute the assets out so they could get paid, and they couldn't participate in the management. Now, over time, some states have weakened this. And what they did was they allowed what we call judicial foreclosure, and the creditor can reach in and actually grab the assets of the LLC. Now, a few states have held the original intent of the law, and those are going to be Nevada, Wyoming. Those are the strongest states in the nation. When other states have weakened the charging order protection, Nevada and Wyoming have strengthened it. And it's in the legislative history, and it's continual where you can actually rely on this law. And so there is a remedy in these two states, and that remedy is simply that the money that distributes out of the LLC goes to the judgment creditor. Now, again, the way we structure it, the money is going to be distributed out of the LLC. Now, with a tax law, I don't want to get into this too much, but there is also something else that happens, because if money doesn't get distributed out of the LLC, then there still needs to be a tax that needs to be addressed. Tax situation needs to be addressed. And so what happens is under Rev Ruling 77-137, the court said the holder of a charging order, since they were supposed to get the money, actually gets a tax liability. Now think how much of a poison pill that is. You think you're happy, or a judgment creditor is happy because they got a judgment against you, and they think they're going to get paid, then you don't get paid, and then at the end of the year they get a K-1 showing that they owe X amount of taxes on income they never received. And so that's what we rely on, protecting our our assets from an asset protection standpoint, and that's coming from you getting sued personally. It protects the business and it protects the business's assets. Now look at the statute and why it works. The statute in Wyoming basically states that the exclusive remedy, now I love how it's just drafted, because the exclusive remedy, what does the exclusive remedy mean? It's the only one, right? Well, I know that Wyoming, the legislature actually said, hey, you know what, we're dealing with attorneys, so we need to be crystal clear on what this means. Even though exclusive means it's the only remedy, they also said, hey, any other remedies that attorneys might come up with are not available. So that is how we go ahead and get it done. So let me give you guys kind of a long-term hold structure that we use, and it works from a tax-wise standpoint, and it works from an asset protection standpoint. Now let's say that we go ahead and we do have LLCs created in bad states. So this would be an in-state LLC. And some of the worst offenders for the law that have destroyed the protections of asset protection are California, Florida, and Colorado, and a bunch of the states in between there. Now, if you are doing business in Colorado, Florida, or anywhere else that has a bad charging order protection, then what we do is we go ahead and implement the strong charging order protection state, and that's going to be a Wyoming or Nevada LLC. Now, we do the business in these in-state LLCs, but these LLCs are going to be owned by the Wyoming or Nevada and what we call a holding LLC. And then eventually, you'll be the member of that. And so now we got the charging order, we got the liability protection. If anything goes bad in this property here, this property is still safe, and you're still safe down here. So we've got the best of both worlds. All right. That's going to be another structure where now what we can do is go ahead and incorporate the business aspect, because we can form a corporation. The corporation's our workhorse, and the corporations can start managing each of these LLCs and actually doing duties and services for these LLCs. In return, we can pay a fee to the corporation, and now we're decreasing your tax liability. All right, more on that later. All right, for short-term rental strategies. What we run into is if we flip properties or do quick turns in our own name, a short-term, generally under 1 year, the IRS will tag us as a dealer. And what the problem about this is an intent-based test. You can do one deal and still be tagged as a dealer. Now, what the problem with the being tagged as a dealer is, no more 1031 exchanges, no more depreciation deductions, no more long-term capital gains rates, no more passive income. And what that means, everything becomes earned active income, subject to an additional 15.3%. Now that really hurts, because if you're doing a deal, you look at your ROI and you're doing it in percentages, and let's say you have to pay an additional 15.3% to the actual government. Now your deal isn't as profitable as you thought. All right. The other thing is our installment sale deferral gets affected. Now, we do a 3-day that's tax and AP class. I encourage everybody who's watching this to attend that, because we get into all these topics in depth and we give you the solutions too. All right, so fixing and flipping, how we want to go ahead and do our short-term deals is we would do an in-state LLC where the deal is actually located. We would buy the property, rehab the property, and sell the property out of this LLC. Now, that contains a liability. But if we just simply set up an LLC and had it come down to our personal return, then we're still going to be tagged as a dealer. So what we do is we use a corporation. Again, the corporation's doing the business. The corporation's in the business of flipping properties, and now we avoid dealer status. Now, the other best thing about having a corporation is the simple fact that the corporation has all those juicy deductions. Okay? We get so many more deductions out of the corporation than we do personally. The other thing that a corporation does is the ability to go ahead and fund retirement plans, and I'm going to get into those a little bit later. The corporation also is under the corporate tax code, the earn, spend, and then get taxed on what's ever left over. Now, I just mentioned retirement plans. I encourage all of my clients, when they get the education and learn how to actually be successful in real estate or stock, to go ahead and take control of your retirement planning. So what I want you guys to do is, with your corporation, you'll form what we call a QRP. And again, we'll get more into this in the 3-day event. But we'll form the QRP, and that QRP is going to be our retirement account. Now, The other thing that we want you to do is take your existing plans, roll them over into the QRP, and now you have control. The best thing about the QRP is a simple fact that you are the trustee. You can go ahead and buy and sell real estate. You can hold real estate, buy options, tax liens, notes, deeds of trusts, and this is really powerful. And it gives you the control in the fact that when you are driving down the road, let's say you're driving down the road, you find an actual property that you want to make an offer on, it's attractive property, it's low price, it's a great deal, you need to act fast. Well, as the trustee of your own plan, you can go ahead and write a check, as opposed to a self-directed IRA where you actually have to contact the custodian and they've got to handle the transaction for you. So you're in control of this plan. The other neat thing you can do, and I'll get into one little simple strategy, and again, the 3-day event's gonna cover this in a lot more detail, but the other thing you can do is go ahead and borrow from your plan. Now, when you borrow from your plan, you're not limited to 60 days, you get 60 months to pay it back. Now, when you borrow from your plan, you can go ahead, and what I like to my clients to do is borrow from their plan and then pay off their high interest credit cards. And then what they'll be doing is paying their own plan back and putting the interest in their own plan as opposed to the credit cards. What does that do? That raises your FICO score, and now you have alternative sources of funding that come at a lower interest rate as opposed to if you had a lower FICO score. Again, just one of the simple things. We can pool accounts, we can make contributions, we can continue to build this retirement plan and continue to put more money in there to do more deals, and it goes into your plan that you're in control of. Now, again, you've built, you've saved, you sacrificed, you built up your wealth, your asset base, and unfortunately, again, like I mentioned, you're gonna pass away. One of the things I wanna avoid is you guys passing away and all that hard work, sacrifice, and the building that you've done, it goes to your heirs, and your heirs, it causes them problems. And what I mean by that is, the heirs start fighting over it. Maybe an heir gets a lot of money and they're a spendthrift. They can't control their spending, they blow it all. Or maybe substances come into a problem. Or maybe they get preyed upon by those predators because now they have cash. And so there's some simple ways that we can do it. And what the tool we use to protect your heirs from this wealth is called a living trust. Now, the living trust is great because it's effective immediately. As soon as you form it, you sign it, and you fund it by titling assets into it, it becomes effective and it controls. Now, it's almost like having your cake and eating it too, because while the trust is in place, you're able to go ahead and benefit from the assets. What we do is we title all the assets in the name of the living trust. Generally, it's your last, it's your surname, living trust. Now, once the assets are titled in the trust, probate no longer applies. And what I mean by that is the probate, because it's a separate entity, a legal being, it's alive, like it says, living trust, and so it doesn't have to go through probate when you pass. So it lives on, and it avoids the 18 to 24 months and the tens of thousands of dollars for the court system to handle it. Because generally, if you have a will, it's gonna have to go through probate, or if you die without a will, you have to go through probate, and the only people who win in that situation are gonna be the attorneys, okay? The neat thing we can do is we can go ahead and put provisions to protect our heirs. We have greater control over the distributions. In fact, if we want our money split over time or the assets divided over time, we can do that. In fact, I have a 3-year-old son, and what I've done for my 3-year-old son is at the age of 25, he gets 10%. Age of 30, he gets 10%. Age of 35, he gets 40%. And then at 40, he gets the remainder. Now, hopefully, I've taught him financial stewardship. And in teaching him financial stewardship, hopefully, he's able to take that money and grow it. But if he doesn't, or there are other things come into life, the money is distributed over time, so it's not blown all at once. It also saves him from predators. Because while the money is still in the trust and hasn't been distributed out, it's protected from his creditors and the predators out there. We can also individually plan for our heirs. We can love our kids the same, or our family the same, or our heirs the same, but sometimes we need to create different plans for different individuals depending on the circumstances. Maybe there's a substance abuse problem that we can take care of inside the drafting of the trust. Maybe we just want to go ahead and keep distributions coming so they can support them, but they're not wasted. And that comes into protecting the beneficiaries from themselves. So here's your overall plan, what it's going to look like. We want to go ahead and title all the assets into the living trust. and what that's going to entail: your short-term real estate structure, your long-term real estate structure, having your cash protected and being able to distribute it out, even your vehicles, your residence, and of course your workhorse, your corporation. Now the QRP is a standalone because it's got designated beneficiaries, and so we don't need to put that in the trust. But there's some ways we can link the trust to the QRP that are quite beneficial. So anyway, that's what I wanted to cover. I encourage all of you to sign up for the 3-day tax and asset protection workshop. What we're going to be doing, it's 3 days. We've tried to cut it to 2 days, but there's so much material we want to get conveyed to you because it's going to keep you out of trouble. And so we have a 3-day tax and asset protection workshop for real estate investors and also just investors in general. We'll cover topics such as how to invest in your retirement plans, short-term strategies. We're going to get that into a lot more detail, long-term strategies, and then also estate planning. We're going to get into qualified opportunity zones and also cost segregations and a lot of tips and tricks and strategies that the wealthy use. The neatest thing is I used to be a litigation attorney, and what we have done is taken that experience and other experiences from clients and the other attorneys that work for our firm, and we put it into the 3-day program. I'm Michael Bowman, one of the partners with Anderson Business Advisors, and I wish you guys the best of success in your investing and also your lives. Thank you.